Hello, it is Fabian Williams, marriage and family therapist, here with a little issue, I guess you could call it. My issue is with the flippant use of the word trauma. Many of you know I'm studying to finish a traumatology degree, and I am writing the dissertation as I should be writing the dissertation right now, but I took a break because I keep hearing the word trauma. And some things, okay, so yes, we do have little t and big T's. And so some things we can call trauma and it be a little t. But I think it's becoming an overused term. So I just want to do a little bit of breaking down of that term, as well as give some details, some things you can actually put a pin in when you decide to use that word, so that we cannot devalue the word by attaching it to everything from a common cold. I had a cold and I coughed and woo, it was traumatic. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to water down this word to the point where when you are talking about someone who is truly experiencing a traumatic event or has gone through some level of trauma, they become equivalent with you having a common cold or you having a cat cross your path and scare you. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is trauma means wound. The definition of trauma is wound. So that's the reason that when you hear about surgeons and they say, I am a traumatologist, that is because they are there to heal a wound, to figure out what happened with that wound. We also tie trauma. When people say trauma, there's often some automatic connection with PTSD. Those two are not the same thing. Trauma is in PTSD as well as PTSS and all of the other things that have come out after that, but it is a portion of that. So post-traumatic stress disorder, the first thing you need to be is post. It has to be post. You have to be post for a month in order for it to be diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder. You also have to have exposure to a threat of violence, sexual violence, physical violence, anything along those lines where you think you will potentially lose your life, or there is the possibility of bodily harm or loss of life. You have to have those intrusive thoughts, those things that you just cannot get rid of. They are intruding on your life. You cannot function effectively because these thoughts intrude on your space. Avoidance, you avoid wherever that trauma occurred or anything like it, anything similar to it. And that's where we get that word trigger, which is another overused word where, if something happened at there was a shooting at the baseball field, you avoid baseball. You avoid the baseball field at all costs. All those things. There's that negative mood. Often there are alterations in your mood, and it's not explainable with anything else. And again, the duration is a month for that. A while back, 1980. Ooh, I'm going to mess up the year, so I'm not even going to say it. But the ACEs survey, ACEs study was taken on by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. And they found that there are approximately 10, they studied 10 issues that happened to people in childhood that carried throughout their life and could impact them physically, could impact them mentally, added to our prison system, added to so many things. And if we can capture that stuff early on, the ACEs is the adverse childhood experiences. So if we were to capture those things early on, if we found that you had someone in your house that was incarcerated, if you found that there was someone who was insulting you, making you feel less than, if there was someone who was physically or sexually assaulting you or a person in your house that you were aware of, if you had lost an individual prematurely, a mother, a father, somebody primary, that primary caregiver, premature, all these ACEs, and there were these different things. If somebody drank, smoked, not if they were addicted, there was some level of addiction. Those things impact children, and we did not realize that they carried into adulthood. So I utilized that. I utilized the PCL-5, which is a PTSD scale that allows people to answer the questions on the different experiences that they're having to see if they actually fit into the definition for PTSD, not this whole trauma. Oh my goodness, it rained so hard and I couldn't see. It was trauma. No, we're not doing that. We're not going to minimize that word to that level. So when we talk about trauma, there is acute, chronic, and complex, right? Acute trauma is one incident, and let me take a caveat. Everyone experiences trauma differently. So there are some people who can get PTSD from one event. One event can send them into a level of traumatic response. We went through a level of corporate trauma as Americans because we watched American football. I heard somebody say the world watched this football game. You do know that football is not as popular as we think it is. That's American football. When the young man had the heart attack on the field, we went through a level of corporate trauma together because that is traumatizing to know that CPR isn't cute and it isn't a couple compressions and oh my goodness, he coughed. No, it's not that. It is an ugly practice. It is almost trying to break the bones of that individual to get that heart rejuvenated or restarted. So that was shocking, traumatic for many of us. The numerous shootings that are occurring of Black and brown individuals right in the street just for driving while Black, for walking while Black, for drinking tea while Black, for whatever. We are having some level of traumatic experience in those. So yes, everyone is impacted differently. You saw some people say they could watch the video of Tyree. They could not watch the video Tyree Nichols because it was just too much for their mental space. Everyone is impacted differently. So some of those are acute. Chronic is those things that keep happening over and over and over again. What we just talked about, the Black and brown deaths, those are happening over and over and over again. So we're experiencing a chronic level of trauma. And then complex is just a multiplicity of different types of victimization, so that we call it polyvictimization, being re-victimized over and over and over again in different ways, because trauma breeds trauma. And when you become accustomed to the chaos that is a traumatic life, it becomes normal. It normalizes it for you. So you're not on guard as you could be. We know that trauma sends us into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, feign. We know that, children cannot fight. They're too little. Children cannot fly. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have a car. They don't have, most of them don't have even bus fare or don't know don't know their whereabouts to the point where they could run away. So most of them freeze. And when you freeze, those toxic cortisol, that all of those hormones and things are still coursing through your body as if you released them with a fight, as if you released them by running, but they're just going up and down in your body. And think about yourself running from a bear. I heard someone give this example. You're running from a bear. You're running down the street into your house from a bear. You shut the door and you're safe, and you do that breathe up. Think about children who are victimized in their home. They never get to breathe up. So that's constantly coursing through their brain. And there is actual neurobiological evidence that the brain is changed based upon the traumatic experiences that a child has. So I say all of that to say that trauma is big. It's so much bigger than what we're giving it, what we're putting on it. We're placing it on everything. And I really want us as a culture to stop doing that, because it minimizes the necessity for trauma specialists. It minimizes the need for mental health specialists, mental health practitioners, mental health clinicians, all of that stuff. We're watching the world spiral out of control with people pulling machetes, with people shooting in schools, in churches, and trauma is so much bigger than what we're giving it credit for. So I hope that this, and I know I'm not always this serious, but this is my zhuzh, this is my space. This is the place where I know we can make a difference. We can impact healing. So get to know some things about trauma. When you want to use that word, get the backstory, get the understanding. And then if you feel like you have experienced any of these things that I just talked about, find yourself a good quality trauma therapist, not a generalist. I'm sorry. Uh, in this instance, generalists can be dangerous because they touch on a lot of things, but don't have the specialty to go into that place and truly help you process it. So get a good trauma specialist. Some names that come up, some good books that I can think of. I'll give you the authors. I won't give you all of their books because I have quite a few. Peter Levine is a great one. Janina Fisher, Bessel van der Kolk, love him. Joy DeGruy, post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is a very interesting for Black and Brown populations. Eric Gentry and Francine Shapiro, EMDR, everybody. Well, not everybody, but a lot of therapists and people in this field know of EMDR, but don't know that Francine Shapiro was the one who spearheaded it and did all of the work behind it. And then there's Resma Menakem. I am going to name his book My Grandmother's Hands. It is just a game changer in my mind for the things that we experience in trauma. Again, I am Fabian Williams, marriage and family therapist. Sorry for this serious video because I'm usually not this serious, but this is a serious topic and I don't play when it comes to trauma and the things involved in trauma. Again, Fabian Williams from lifeanew.com, and I just pray you have a blessed and beautiful day.